a raven nest, or a magpie nest, or whatever. And it's just not big enough. They might have 3 babies, and the third one falls out, but especially in this wind. But luckily, we had a great volunteer that joined our team, Tina Penny, and she already had experience with re-nesting owls. She knew just how to do it. And so we just, hit the ground running and started rescuing owls. Was that Tina Penny got a call from Whitworth University, and they had a couple of baby owls on the ground. And she called some of the volunteers, and we ran out to Whitworth, and one of the babies had died on the ground. The other one was okay. And one of the teachers had found it. So here we had this little baby owl, and luckily Tina knew just what to do. That we got to get this baby owl up as high as we can get it, where the mom can take care of it. People won't bother it. Dogs and cats won't bother it. And she said, Jim, we need to make a nest. So that's what he's doing in the picture on the ground there. He took a wicker basket that we had and lined it with some pine boughs. And then, luckily, the maintenance crew there had a lift machine, and they lifted Tina up with the owl and the basket. They secured it with some straps way up in the basket in the tree. And she rode up there and put the baby in the new nest, and we all got out of there. The mom started feeding the baby in the wicker basket, and sure enough, we kept getting reports from the university that, the mom's coming and feeding it. And a few weeks, it fledged and flew away, and it was fine. So we were really happy with that. Yeah. So the way all this got started, I have all that stuff on the screen. The way all this got started was summer before last. You probably remember, was really, really hot. And it was so hot that hawks and eagles were abandoning their nests, the big young ones, the ones that weren't ready to fledge yet. They couldn't fly, but it was just so hot in the trees, and they just had to get some relief, and they just fall out of the nest or jump out of the nest. And there were headlines in all the newspapers about it. And everybody was concerned, everybody with Audubon was concerned, but we just didn't know what to do. We didn't have anything set up. And the only rehabber is way down in Pullman. So, occasionally somebody would take a bird there, but we just didn't have a system set up. So at the next board meeting, Madonna said, we have to do something about these. This is Madonna, a wonderful, wonderful volunteer. She said, we have to do something about this. You can't just let those birds, be on the ground and not have some response, because people kept calling us, and people would call everybody. They would call the police, and they would call Fish and Wildlife, and, there just wasn't an answer. So Madonna said, let's just have a team, and what we'll do is we'll drive birds to Pullman. We don't have any experience like taking care of birds, rehabbing birds, or anything like that, but at least we could drive them. And so my wonderful husband Jim and I volunteered to help Madonna get this going. So where we were going with the birds was 75 miles from Spokane, which is a long way. But there's
it doesn't show up.
It doesn't show
up.
up.
It doesn't show up on our screen.
Okay, we'll ignore it then. So this veterinary hospital there in Pullman, they'll take any kind of animal, any kind of domestic animal, a wild animal, doesn't matter. They're using these animals to help train their veterinarians. So, they've always got eagles and other birds there that they just take, and they give them medical care, and then they keep them until they can release them. So it's just a wonderful place, and we're really happy to take birds to them. But we needed some volunteers, so we sent out a letter to our Audubon members, and we got 12 volunteers right away. Just wonderful. And several of the people already had experience with birds. Some of them had already been volunteering in various places, working with birds, so it was really good. So we came up with some goals. And we knew right away that one of our best goals or biggest goals was going to be just to give people advice. Because a lot of times people just don't know what to do. And there'll be like a little bird on the ground. They're like, what do I do? What do I do? So that was one of our goals, is just to help people, guide them with their answers, you know. And also this would help Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, because they were getting lots and lots of bird calls. And they just couldn't answer all the calls, because they're also dealing with baby bears and mountain lions and everything else. So we said, well, you know, we'll let them send us calls. And of course, we also wanted to try to save birds if we could, you know, or at least reduce their suffering. If there's a bird has a really bad broken wing or something like that, it's not going to make it, and they can't set it, you know, at least we can get it to a vet and let it put it to sleep so it doesn't suffer. And of course, we want to educate people that call us, and we want to interact with the public in a positive way. And when I say that, is sometimes people call with questions and you just want to say, you dummy. We can't say that. One of our main objectives is to be kind. Because if somebody calls you with an injured or sick bird, they really care. They care about these birds and they want to help. So you don't want to discourage that. So that's what we do. We've had lots and lots of calls. People reach out to us and we do something. Our process is we've set up a email address on our website. So you have to go to our website and you have to read, you know, what to do if you find a baby bird or an injured bird, and read what it says there. And then at the end, it has our email address. Because we found that if we put the email address first, people wouldn't read what we had on the website. So we get these emails from people. We don't have a direct phone call or anything. And also Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, they email us calls. I mean, well, when they get a call. So what we do, we get one of these emails, is we contact the person either by email or by phone or text or whatever, and we find out what's going on. And, you know, it might just be a matter of telling them, well, you just put this bird that hit your window in a box and bring it in your house and let it rest, and it might recover and you can just let it go. Or if there's a little bird on the ground and you know it fell out of a nest, try to get it back in the nest. Mainly try to keep your cat from eating it. And we also, if they are willing and able, we get them to capture a bird and take it to a veterinarian themselves instead of us having to drive everywhere. But if they can't do it and they really need help, then we have a lot of volunteers, and somebody will go and pick the bird up, let everybody know that we're going to take care of it, and then we call a veterinarian and say, you know, we've got a bird here, can you take it? And if they can, then we drive it to that veterinarian. If we can't, we'll try another veterinarian. And one of our early rescues happened when some baby barn owls were found. There was a load of hay. It was delivered to Loon Lake, to a horse farm. And when the hay was unloaded, lo and behold, there was all these little baby owls. No mama, just the babies. And you see they're all different sizes. It's because they didn't all hatch on the same day. They, get bigger. So there they were. And their mama was back in George, Washington, way over on the gorge. So one of our volunteers drove up to Loon Lake and picked up these babies in a box. And she drove up to Ritzville. And then somebody else picked them up and took them all the way to Pendleton. And in Pendleton, there's this wonderful rehab center. And they specialize in barn owls. So it worked out really well because it was a really big success right there. But anyway, these little babies took an unplanned trip of over 400 miles. And later on, we got notified that there was a bald eagle on the ground. And this was during the very hottest part of the summer. So this is our first eagle rescue this year. And my husband, Jim, and I drove to Tum Tum, and there was this young eagle on the ground, and it was hopping around. It didn't look bad. You really couldn't tell anything was wrong with it, but obviously there was because it couldn't fly. So there was a man and his little boy there, and that's the ones who had called us. And this little boy was like maybe 6 years old, and you could tell he was so worried, about this eagle. So we were able to track it, get it in a big dog carrier, and then the little boy and his dad came over, and the little boy's like, what's going to happen now? What are you going to do with my eagle? And he said, would you like to help carry the box to the car? And he was like, oh yeah. So we let him help carry it, and he was just thrilled. So we felt like, we've reached a child, which was a good thing to do. Oh, and the eagle, we took him to Hunter Veterinary Clinic in Spokane, and there was nothing really wrong with it. It was just hot and tired and hungry. It just needed to chill out and had a little something wrong with its eye that they were able to treat, but he was fine to go in a few days. So that was another good success. Here's some of the equipment we use to capture birds and carry them. We always have some kind of a pet carrier, the right size, hard hat, safety glasses, a blanket. You can lay a blanket down over like an eagle, and if his eyes are covered, it calms him down. Then you can pick him up as long as you hold the wings and hold the talons away from him. And sometimes we use a fishing net to do that. But you don't want to be chasing a bird around with a fishing net doing this, because you do more harm than good. So to capture a raptor or other large bird, you need to wear your heavy gloves, maybe a heavy jacket, and gently pick the bird up and get it into a box as soon as you can. And just to make sure that you don't let him get a hold of you, that's why you're wearing those gloves. And with wild herons and egrets, we haven't had to capture any of those here yet, but the time is coming. And I know from past experience that herons and egrets are really bad about trying to poke you in the eye to defend themselves. So you have to wear eye protection if you're doing some kind of water bird like that. So then there was this time that we got a call. Actually, Madonna took this call, and it was about a little owl that had been sleeping all day in a gravel parking lot. And the man said, I know it's alive, I can see it breathing, but it's just not moving around, and that's so odd for an owl. So Madonna said, well, if you can get it in a box and bring it to us, you know, we'll make sure it gets to a vet. So, he put it in a box, but he didn't put a lid on the box. And he took it and he put it in the cab of his truck and he started driving down the road and he decided to call Madonna. He called Madonna and he said, hi, Madonna, I've got the owl. And then all of a sudden he just started saying all kinds of swear words. He was yelling and screaming and Madonna was getting upset. She was like, what's the matter? What's the matter? Are you okay? And he parked the truck and the little owl lit on the dashboard and snapped a picture of it. And she said, well, just let it go, let it go. And so he just rolled the window down and flew away. Well, let me find out it was a nighthawk.
Oh.
And nighthawks, that's what they do. They lay on the ground or a branch or something all day and then just sleep. But Madonna called it the lethargic owl. And then there was Henrietta, a nice couple out in Spokane Valley, had this red-tailed hawk land in their yard, and it didn't look like anything was wrong with it, but it couldn't fly once again. So they waited a couple of days, and they didn't see like another bird coming to feed it, so it wasn't a fledgling. And finally, they got a hold of us, and Jim and I went to their yard. And they'd been calling this bird Henrietta and giving it water and stuff. But when we got there, we couldn't find it. There was a big brush pile in their yard, and there were some outbuildings, and they, you know, had neighbors on either side, and their house had a raised porch. And we looked in that brush pile, and we looked behind all the buildings, we looked under that porch, we went around, looked in the neighbors' yards, we just could not find it. And so finally, you know, the guy said, well, I'm sorry, I guess it flew away. I'm sorry you had to drive so far. I said, well, let's just wait just a few more minutes. Maybe it'll make a sound or come out. So we sat down in the chairs and started to talk, and I looked up, and there was Henrietta. She was sitting on the porch, right next to where we were. We looked under the porch, we didn't look on the porch. So we were able to catch her pretty easily. But she was sitting there next to a fan, and I think she was wanting him to turn the fan on. Because it was so hot. So we've had some training for our group. You know, like I said, we just jumped in with both feet and we just started trying to do what we could do. And so Tina Penny, that's one of our great volunteers, she arranged for us to go out to West Valley Learning Center, where Jamie Oatsby Mark runs this. It's a kind of a center that does a lot of education for children, and they have some wild birds there that are injured that they keep, you know, they rehab them and now they just keep them for education. So we went out there and we were able to handle this one Harris hawk, just to see what it was like to hold a large bird. And then we also had some other training that we did, you know, what to do and how to do it, kind of thing. The next thing we got to do was this arborist was having training in Spokane, and you wouldn't think that they'd have anything to teach us about catching birds, but it was amazing training. This set of arborists were training other arborists. We're teaching people how to make nest cavities in snags, how to preserve snags instead of just cutting the tree down, you know, to save the snag. And this guy was so good with the chainsaw, he would make places for bats to nest and places for birds to nest. But they also wanted to interact with us because we knew what local birds that people might encounter. So we showed them a slideshow of local birds and then let them ask us questions. And then they showed us, you know, what to look for to see if there's a nest in the tree. You know, looking for scat on the ground or whitewash from an owl or whatever. And then they also showed us how to save these trees. And the objective of this company is to try to keep birds from going extinct by creating nesting places for them and snags. And I was so impressed. There was a lot of Spokane arborists there, some people from the state, some people from the city parks department were there. And they said that they're doing this stuff now. And I was just like blown away. It was great. And they also taught us about some of the laws that protect birds, like the 1918 Migratory Bird Treaty Act, which protects any bird. It doesn't just protect birds that migrate, despite the name. But the whole point is, birds don't just stay in our country, they fly into Canada and Mexico. And so they made it against the law to have a lot of egret feathers to put in your hat, and that's why it started. And so all birds are protected under this act. And of course, there's birds that you hunt, and there's an exception to that. But you cannot have nests or feathers or eggs of birds. That's against the law. And then another law, the Eagle Act, was particularly aimed at golden eagles and bald eagles. And back in the past, people regularly shot eagles. And I know they still do that sometimes, but back then it was like for sport, it was just. And so this law was really to help bald eagles, but it's also against law to bother their nests. Even if they're not being used, you can't cut that tree down or do anything to disturb that nest. And then the Endangered Species Act, which is for only birds that are endangered in your state. And in Washington, we don't have too many endangered species, but marbled murrelets, common loons, spotted owls, and ferruginous hawk are all considered threatened or endangered in our state. And that gives them further protection. And then we got to go to this great place, Birds of Prey Northwest, which is in St. Mary's. And Janie Bell Camp runs this place. She's been working with hawks and eagles and owls her whole life, practically. She's got this wonderful facility.
She's a raptor biologist.
She's a raptor biologist. She has some nursing training. She has a facility there to take care of any kind of bird, and she's just wonderful with these birds. She's got a big flight cage, which is a building that's built with a net over the top, so she can put birds in there and let them practice flying before she actually releases them. And she's very successful. It's just a wonderful spot. Normally, we don't take birds out of state, so we can't drive birds to her unless it's some kind of an emergency. The Department of Fish and Wildlife doesn't like for us to take birds out of state. And part of that has to do with like avian flu, and part of it is just, genetics, and just you don't know what you're fooling with. So, but Janie will answer our questions. If we call her and say, look, we got an eagle, we don't know what to do, she'll talk us through catching it and just whatever we do. She's great. So the results of our Save a Bird program is we've created sort of a bird 911. Now, people didn't know what to do when they had a bird, and they didn't have anybody to call. And when they did call people, nobody knew what to do. So now if they can just get on our website, we'll help them. So we received over 80 emails since last March. We've had 32 rescues where we drove, maybe more than this because our records aren't perfect. It might be 40. We've driven at least 2,230 miles and spent at least 180 hours volunteering on this. It's been great, a great teaching opportunity for everybody. And Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife is feeling some relief now because we're taking most of their bird calls. And we continue to improve. I mean, from the beginning, we were just like flying by and we didn't know what we were doing, but we kind of figured it out now. We got 12 more volunteers, so now we have 22. We've got our email figured out to where we have somebody on call every day that will check for emails. So, you know, not just one person's doing it all the time or whatever. And some of our people are working to become rehabbers. We have at least one, maybe two people that want to be rehabbers. And we
Well,
have
an audience here.
one's in the audience, but I don't want to embarrass her. And we have a bat expert. So every once in a while we'll get somebody call us, you know, they found a baby bat or they think it's a baby bat. And so we have somebody to call or we'll go drive and pick it up and do whatever. And so we also sent out letters to all the local veterinarians asking if they would help us. So we have 7 local vets now, whereas before we had like none. So 3 of the local vets are actually rehabbers. They have facilities to actually keep the birds and take care of them and eventually release them. So our drives to Pullman have gotten less and less frequent, although we still go there because really none of the local vets want to take anything but hawks and owls and eagles. Sometimes they'll make an exception if it's something, you know, that they can just take care of and then we take it away. So a lot of times we get this question, why can't I keep it? It's so huge. And the reason you can't keep these birds and raise it yourself, as I mentioned, it's against the law. Also, these birds are delicate and they each have their own diet. People spend years and years training to be rehabbers, and they know what to feed the bird and what not to feed them and what not to do. And also the bird could have an injury. And, you know, you're not going to know that. You don't have an x-ray machine at your house. So one time we had a little baby owl that's fallen out of the tree. And when we got to the house, there was the teenage boy in the living room with this owl on his lap. He was holding it, patting it, and he did not want to leave that. They let us take that owl. And it was really hard to say, no, you can't keep it, you know, because he loved that owl. But anyway, we eventually got it away from him, and it was probably better off. So I want to thank all my volunteers. They're not all showing on my screen up there, but there's 22 of them, and I really appreciate all they've done. They've been great.
Was another big variable this summer in the maintenance, because some birds weren't.
Let's get you the microphone. Yeah, and now we have some time for questions, Gary. Yeah, okay.
Saying that the avian flu was a challenge because some birds were not picked up because there was concern about avian flu.
That's exactly right.
And when they went to whatever better facility, they needed to be quarantined for a few days, honestly, to see if they survive. It's really kind of what it was. And I also wanted to say, at WSU, my only time going down there long term, I was thrilled to hear that they try to release the birds in the same area. They have a cadre of volunteers in Pullman that will bring them where they need to be released, and that means a lot to the people that have worked to.
Any other questions or comments?
I wanted to say that we can't hear the microphone.
Microphone's off.
Thank you.
Okay, when you take them to the vet, are the vets doing this pro bono? who pays for the birds to be taken care of? Did that come true?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
You take them to Pullman, they ask for a donation. In fact, if you take them to any of the vets, they ask for a donation. So what we have done is, in some cases, just given a large check to the various vets to cover that, so our volunteers don't have to, take it out of their pocket. It comes out of Spokane Audubon.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
What was the conclusion to the story of Henrietta, who was found on the porch? Did she eventually get better and leave, or did she stay?
Well, we took her to a veterinarian, and a lot of times, either they feel like they can't tell us the outcome, so we don't know. Sorry. Anything else?
Why are finding birds? Why do they only take raptors and owls? What about the little?
I think they just have training in raptors and owls, is what it is. And they have, special cages and they have limited space. I don't know. It's really hard when somebody has a bird that's injured or whatever, and, you know, they can't find any place to take it. But Pullman will take anything. And while I'm up here, if anybody else wants to volunteer with Save a Bird, we're taking volunteers. We have a sign-up sheet in the back. We'll put your name, you know, if you haven't already, and just put a note on there, I'd like to volunteer, so we can contact you.
Is this information, so I'm Joe General Public, and is this information aside from our website, is this out there, have the news people or NPR or SPR gotten a hold of us to put this out, that this is available?
Okay, Madonna is gonna take that. She's kind of in charge of that.
Yeah, I'm the chapter's publicity chair, and we have let the local media know we're doing this, and they help advertise our meetings and stuff. But I wanted to tell you, I'm retired from Washington Fish and Wildlife, and that's the entity that licenses wildlife rehabilitators, whether they rehabilitate deer or birds or bears or whatever, all over the state. And there used to be quite a few in Spokane County. When I worked there, I've been gone 4 years, but there used to be half a dozen. These are veterinarians who are willing to do this, but it's all pro bono. And so they're all dependent on donations. And so the only, other than WSU, the only one over in our neck of the woods is Hunter Vet Clinic that Bea mentioned, Dr. Mark Schrade, and he is just for raptors, and that's what he applied for. But when we had vets, you asked about Lopers, we had some who were rehabbers in the past, they aren't anymore, who would take small birds. But it's a thankless job. They don't get any money for it other than donations. So it's hard to convince a vet to take that on. And some of them do just by the goodness of their heart. But it's hard to get vets to do that. It used to be easier, but there's a lot of rules and regulations about rehabilitating wildlife, so, yeah.
Oh, you didn't answer her question though about publicizing it. Publicizing what we're doing.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, so Fish and Wildlife, well, we do about what we do, but Fish and Wildlife on their website publicizes everything, and then when they did about rehabilitation, what you can and can't do and everything. And when they get inquiries about it, they're feeding them to us. And our website explains what we're doing too. So that's kind of where we're at on that. And we, I've been thinking that into the next season, when we get into the season of little owlets coming out of trees, we'll see if we can get like maybe Eli from the Spokesman Review or someone from the Inlander to come down and do a story. And then we can spread the word even better. Yeah.
Thank you.
By the way, I would like to encourage anybody out in Zoom land to, if you have a question, just raise your hand and we'll call on you.
7 in the chat.
Did you want to do the chat first?
Go ahead.
Is this on?
Yes.
Kind of extending on it, if someone actually just say Google wildlife rehab or near me, would this come up on the Google search? Has anyone actually checked that to see if it shows up on?
Have
Google?
not, good suggestion. It would, if you Googled wildlife rehabilitation in Washington, you would go to the Department of Fish and Wildlife. Definitely. But,
I mean, that's the first thing I would do if I had a bird.
yeah. Yeah.
Comes up first when you Google it, Audubon Society.
All right. Good news.
Did everybody out in
It
Zoom
comes up
here?
first when you Google it, so.
Okay.
There was one question in the chat about utility companies, and do they know who to contact to help birds?
The state
The state?
has always been in contact with utility companies.
Yeah.
Vista and Inland and everybody.
So the state will be in contact with them, or they know to get in touch with the state.
I'm just looking here on my phone, and there is an app called Animal Health Now, where you can put in your location and it will hook you up to different rehabbers or. So that might be something, a good thing to advertise. Possibly.
Good idea. Thank you.
Here.
There is a veterinary clinic out in Wood Orchard that I have used for small birds.
Try again.
Well,
No, there's something, you must have pushed the button in inadvertently.
well,
Press and hold the button till the lights come on.
so,
Yep, works.
so we're saying that there's a veterinary clinic in Wood Orchard. On take that, take small birds.
Can I do this without a relish? They are no longer advertising as a rehabilitator. Dr. Connie retired, it's a VCA clinic now, but we know that they will help us. But it is not advertised, and they don't want that word out there, and they won't, if just someone Joe Blow walked in, they won't. Sorry. Anyway, so Connie's is not technically rehabilitator anymore, but they're so nice that they work with us. Or chat questions.
Any more questions? Okay, Linda.
A comment about you may want to cover non-native as opposed to native birds.
Okay, well, our policy is that we only transport native birds. There's a few birds like starlings, house sparrows, Eurasian collared doves that we don't spend our time or energy transporting anywhere because they're non-native. They compete with our local birds, and we just didn't think it was right for us to do that.
Any more questions?
Any more chat questions? Oh. Okay.
Thanks.
Well, thank you, Bea.